The personnel office at March Air Reserve Base has two sections that work for me. One is the staffing section. It has 4 employees. Each employee has a segment of the base that they support under Mr. Federick. And then the second section is labor and employee relations under Mr. Parks. And there are 3 employees in that section, and they deal with the entire base and service the entire base population. I think it's important to recognize that we were on the pointy end of the spear at March Air Reserve Base from the beginning of the pandemic. With the returnees from China, we supported them, and that was a whole different level of challenge, and Team March rose to that challenge and exceeded all expectations. The second phase of the pandemic was when we faced it like the rest of the country, particularly in the community of California. And there were a lot of things that we had to consider. March Air Reserve Base at the beginning was involved in the returnees from Wuhan. In the second phase, we were part of the response in a nationwide perspective as one of the first DoD installations to have community issues with the disease. So there were a lot of things that we had to think about. We had a certain number of tools that we had in our toolbox that weren't necessarily designed to help in this situation, and we had to adapt those tools. But the principal focus that we had from the beginning and continue to have is to keep our workforce safe. Our people are the most important, and also to accomplish our mission and preserve a surge mission capability if we're needed. Well, when we were at the beginning, we recognized that we had serious disease in the community and that we had to respond to it in the best way possible. There are essential missions that we have to do at the base. So we made a determination that there were some employees that had to continue to come to base. To preserve their health and to protect them to the best extent possible, we maximized anybody that was capable of teleworking. We moved into a second group and we put them at remote locations. Then there was a third group of those employees that weren't eligible for telework and were not necessarily needed for a particular day's missions. So we left them under the exemption of weather and safety leave. So our employees were divided into 3 groups, with some employees moving from one group to another group based on the mission set that was required to accomplish that day. Well, in the fire department, we have one building. We recognize, based on becoming situationally aware of lessons learned that were potential out there on a national level and a local level, we recognize that first responders were a particular risk, and they are also critical to our mission. We can't have an airfield running, we can't protect structures, life and property without them. So our requirement is to preserve their health and safety as much as possible. One of the things that we recognized early on is that a first responder could be infected and then come back and take out an entire mission capability by infecting the rest of the firefighters that they live and work with for an extended period of time. I think it's important to recognize that we have great respect for what they do. We have great compassion for them and their families, and to make them safe as possible, we took most of the firefighters out of the fire station. We moved them into base lodging, into where they had individual rooms to protect their life and safety and to preserve the mission capability. That required a lot of sacrifices in the fire department members' part, and they rose to the occasion. They made those sacrifices willingly, and for that I think the base community and Team March is very grateful to them. What the takeaway for me is that our employees have jobs, they're getting paid. That was very important for us to accomplish that from the beginning, is to make sure that payroll continued to function. We tried to simplify that process. We tried to make it as user-friendly as possible in light of all the many problems that we had, and we continue to try to do that. Recognizing that many of our families have been impacted by job loss, some have been impacted by serious illness. life goes on. We have all faced the loneliness and isolation of the situation that we find ourselves in. We have a variety of programs that are available to help us, from the chaplain, which is, I think, somebody that sometimes we forget. We also have Airmen and Family Readiness. We also have a very significant mental health component that's available there, but that requires actions on the part of employees to reach out and ask for help. Additionally, we have managers who maintain communication with their employees. I think that's an important component. But if I could put a commercial out there for everybody, I think the principal thing that I'd like to emphasize is check on our wingmen, to keep our buddies, make sure that they're in our thoughts, and that we reach out to check on the health and well-being of our coworkers periodically, and to maintain important social interactions and contacts via distance processes, the telephone, email, whatever everybody's preference is. But I think it's important to reach out to the community at March and make sure that everybody's okay. People are not facing the same levels of adversity, and it's not necessarily always out there. If somebody's at risk, we need to try to go out and look for them and make sure that we're there to support them as we move forward. Yeah. Well, I think it's important for all of us to follow all the rules. There's reasons for them. It's not just so much telework guidelines, it's the guidelines for safe interactions on base. Wearing masks, social distancing are all critical factors. Those protective measures have been well thought out. We've published them extensively recently. Unfortunately, we've had some lapses in mask wear. We've had some lapses in social distancing, and there has not been a loss of life as a result of it, but there has been negative mission impacts. I would just implore the base community and the surrounding community to use common sense and to follow all safety practices there are there for our individual benefit, but mostly for the community and for our families, as we try to preserve mission capability and keep all of our employees safe. That's our critical asset, is our people and our families and the community. And we have to do our part as trained government employees to make sure that we accomplish the mission, but keep everybody as safe as practical through that process. Well, luckily we have more time as we plan to extricate ourselves from the protective postures that we're in now than we had going into them. So we have a recovery working group that management has instituted, where we have a multidisciplinary approach to make sure that we do things in as safe as manner as possible. And that the ball that we've kept our eyes on from the beginning is to keep our employees safe. They're our most precious asset while we accomplish key national security missions, and that is not going to change as we come out of the pandemic, hopefully sooner rather than later, although as I'm fearful that we're going to be in this for some extended period of time into the future. Some of the things from my office that we've contributed to the discussion is that individual employee concerns, as an example. We have noted in the pandemic that particular segments of the population are at greater risk who have underlying health conditions. Recognizing that those underlying health conditions may require us to take additional protective measures for them until we're out of this, we've tried to familiarize management and their plans. As an example, that we may have to invoke the interactive accommodation process under the American with Disabilities Act as an example, to make sure that we keep somebody in remote work for an extended period of time if they're at particular risk or if they have a family member at particular risk. The overarching goal from the beginning, and will remain all the way through this, is to keep our employees safe, to accomplish our key national security missions, and be able to preserve our capability should a national emergency take place, and that we'd have to surge the mission capability here at March. and we're keeping our eye on that. And frankly, it's not easy. Every employee here knows that it's not easy, that we have to maintain good social distancing, we have to maintain appropriate force protection postures with our masks on. We have to continue that until this emergency is behind us, and I know the Team March family will, to preserve our important national security mission and our families, and contribute to the community. And I'm very proud of them, and I think the nation ought to be very proud of our citizen airmen. Well, is that we're always available. Sometimes we have to make decisions that aren't always appreciated, because when we make those decisions, we have to look at it from a rubric of what is best, what is fair, what is legal, what is compliant. We have a lot of procedures and policies that the government has imposed on us, quite rightly so, and we have to make sure that those are fairly adjudicated and are fairly applied to everybody. So I would just ask the cooperation of the Team March family as we go through these. We're learning each day as we go forward. We're committed to keeping our employees safe. We're committed to keeping our families safe. We're committed to the important national security missions that are critical to our nation's defense. And we're just trying to do the right thing for our Team March family. And I just ask everybody to pause occasionally and recognize the difficulties that many of us are facing through this. Our employees deserve great credit, and occasionally saying thank you, occasionally recognizing their work, I think goes a long ways to supporting a very important mission that we accomplish here, man.